bit about myself. Mahi Gautam. I work for Bearings as a cloud security architect. Been there about a little over 3 years. Prior to Bearings, I used to work for Microsoft on their one of the strategic customers as a tech lead on the account. I did about 3 years for Microsoft. That's where I got involved with the cloud security, all that blah blah blah. That's where it started. Before that, I did a lot of like a network security kind of job for a many number of years, and then it's kind of organic growth to the cloud security and then into the cybersecurity department in Bearings, where I am today. And I must say, intentionally, I put this slide as a very, very concise slide. So we wanted to make it as a more interactive session so that I learn something from you guys as a forum, as a community, rather than me, bombarding with a slide after slide and then find everyone falling asleep barely I'm halfway through. That's the intention here. So you will see like a very concise, very, to the point, very brief, okay? And I must say, some of these are my personal opinion. I love to, learn from you. I love some challenge if you don't agree with that as well. But some of these are personally my personal opinion, and some of this data actually come from a Gartner, the Gartner research for this data behind it. To start with, I think, in general, we find like there's a misconception about it. As soon as we say cloud, we start thinking, oh, a lot of security risk or cloud is unknown. It is unknown for sure, but in terms of security risk in the cloud, I personally think that it's no more or no less security, for our workload in a cloud because we just happen to be in the cloud. If we think, look at the stat for the cloud as a platform itself, how often we hear Microsoft as Azure got hacked. Yes, we get daily, information about daily news about the customer, in Microsoft, customers of Microsoft and Azure got hacked. But do we often hear Azure got hacked? That's very rare, if any at all, right? Same for the, AWS and GCP, blah, 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 right? So this is the first point here. I personally think that, the compromise or the breach, security breach of a cloud platform itself, very, very rare. I hope you agree with that.
Can I challenge that slightly and say that I think public cloud providers have had availability events caused by criminal activity, nation state activity, that they haven't necessarily acknowledged as well as they could, kind of hidden behind it being an availability event, whereas actually you could still define it as an attack and it still affects their customers.
It is. I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's still a very much a new platform, new, space for everyone, even the cloud provider themselves as well. As we've seen, I came from Microsoft, it's a very much a learning curve for themselves on a daily basis, okay? And then it's internal communication. I hope I can say that now. Oh yeah, we didn't think about that when they develop a product put out there, customer having to telling them, hey, okay, oh, we didn't think about that's about right. It's very much a learning curve for everyone, out there as well. Based on that, we hear, some breakout news here and there, but in terms of like a major breach, it's as good as, previously Microsoft data center getting hacked, on-premise data center getting hacked, or the Azure cloud getting hacked is probably the equal probability. That's how I look at it.
No, it was their single sign-on service that got attacked, so the whole platform was unavailable effectively.
I mean, again, that's my opinion. Like I said, I'm more up for the challenge. That's my opinion. You know what I mean? So, and now, I think we discussed on the second point here. The third point is where the more cloud risk is more, news about the more cloud hacking, compromises comes here, the third point there. As a customer, as a provider, cloud provider provides a platform with the adequate, probably not 100% control, as the customer would like to have, but they provide adequate, controls so that customer can secure the data workload in the cloud, but customer often they're not overlooking the controls or rushing and, not implementing that, following the best practices when you deploy the workload, that's when they get hacked. For example, like, I outlined one or two very high profile, security breach in the cloud, like, Capital One, as a very basic fundamental, control was missed. They got hacked on a 590 something, $90, $500 million or something ridiculous amount was, they were liable for that. Similar for Uber. How easy is that? Like, as a developer, basically having an API key on a GitHub, just like giving the front door keys, and there we go. It's as easy as that, which could have been easily avoided, having a basic controls in place so that they wouldn't be in a headline. Simple as that, right? To add on to that as well, now this data from a Gartner research. So customer, as this is at the end of 2023. 40% of data customers saying 75% of customer saying that 40% of their data are sensitive data is not in the cloud. But out of that 40%, the 45% data is not protected with adequate encryption, which is the basic security control you want to have, must have for sensitive data, which isn't there. So that means now basically offering a plate, there we go, data is there, please enjoy, kind of thing, right? I know, having said that, I'm very much sounding like a cloud provider salesman. Yes, I used to work for Microsoft, but not anymore. But this is my opinion. Like, they definitely, customer is a shared responsibility. Customer has a big role to play to protect the customer data. Yeah. Now, having said that, of course, now moving into the cloud is unknown territory, for a lot of the, for everyone, even for the cloud provider. So it definitely comes with a lot of challenges than, compared to the on-premises environment, which, matured over the years, compared to the cloud. So definitely coming into the cloud, it comes with a lot of, increased attack surfaces, which got overly matured, in the on-premise environment, but going to the cloud, those all open again. For example, identity, public network access, your GitHub, your repository, your code, everything in the cloud. Now, basically, a lot of open doors, potential open doors going into the cloud. It's one of the major challenges. Other one is now identities, right? Now, moving into the cloud, this is known as identities as a known perimeter, control for the cloud, right? Because there's no physical perimeter, there's no customer data center anymore, which got gets and all this turnstile, before someone has access to the data, right? To the cases. But now identity has taken over that kind of control, so that only someone who can prove, who they are, they can have access to the environment in the cloud, right? Then coming from, in my experience in my current working environment, as well as what back then when I was working for Microsoft, and then what I've seen on the customer, I think that most of the customer at the moment, companies, they basically struggling with this one here. I love to see, like, if anyone in the room here say, okay, we do pretty decent on the identity and access management in the cloud workload, right? And this is the area where majority of organizations, including organizations I work for, this is where the struggle is basically. Okay, what is the right balance? Give access to the people on the need to know basis. They only got just about enough access. Doesn't stop. It doesn't happen very often at all. Other one, lack of visibility. Now, if we compare the cloud with the on-premise, in the on-premise environment, we know which cage, which rack, which slot, what device we have, and what's on the tin. We know that everything, what's made of. But going into the cloud, it's very much unknown. We don't know what's under the hood, and even the workload. We don't know about shadow IT because it's very easy deployment. Anyone has access to the cloud Azure portal, for example, they can go and deploy the resource of their choice. It's very much, open playground for the developers and then enthusiastic whoever want to learn and explore is a very open field for those, everyone basically, right? Because of that, the shadow IT, all that thing caused the lack of visibility around the resource and then sensitivity of the resource, blah, 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 which is a bigger problem, right? Other one is a workload dynamics. Now, cloud offers hundreds, I even lost account now, how many services we can apply, we can implement in the Azure cloud itself. I'm saying Azure because that's the cloud I work on at the moment, and this is my background as well. So if someone, from AWS, GCP, please don't be offended. Okay. Again, that's pretty much the same for other cloud providers as well, right? There's no limit of the, different kind of workload you want to deploy, and the workload come and go. But now in terms of providing the control for this workload, okay, where do we start? The workload is there today, it's deleted tomorrow, and something else been deployed on the day after, right? So that plays a bigger, challenge in terms of managing the control around this workload, which comes and goes, right? DevSecOps, say. Again, the one example we looked at earlier, developer, they very much probably under pressure to get their piece delivered, project delivered on time. Business wanted everything yesterday. They got no time. Only 24 hours in a day. DevOps, developers only, mostly care about their delivery, right? Because of that, the concept of security, secure development goes almost out of the window. Otherwise, something basic as having an API key in a public GitHub wouldn't be there. If the, at least the basic understanding concept, the security mindset was there, that probably wouldn't be there. Third one, the second last is the platform complexity. This is very, very interesting one. So of course, complexity is the enemy of security, right? So that means now a cloud itself is a complex because we don't know, what is under the hood and what makes a component. For example, like Azure App Gateway, right? Application Gateway in Azure. We see there's an app gateway, but what is the underlying technology behind it? What component makes as an Azure app gateway? Customer wouldn't know, and then complexity around that just doesn't help. Just to give it for example, right? I was looking into a kind of incident scenario for a Kubernetes cluster, Azure Kubernetes cluster yesterday. Going through the logs coming from the platform, I see I got to see a lot of random IP addresses I wasn't expecting to see because as per my deployment, those IP doesn't exist. But what it makes a platform work under the hood, those are platform provider implemented kind of implementation that abstract to the customer. It shows the complexity, right? And then when customers start looking into the troubleshooting or looking at the breach scenario, incident response, what those IPs are. Please.
With kind of a CSA hat on here, do you think this composability, understanding what's under the hood of the components that you're deploying and how they operate problem is the same across multiple cloud providers? Or do you think it's worse on some than others? Having used Azure and Amazon and Google Cloud Platform myself, I think there's some variability there. I think actually a lot of the Amazon components are very well defined, and there's a lot of literature out there about how they operate and how you can deploy them safely.
I think that would really help. I mean, from the customer perspective, giving a bit of more insight around how the product is put together, that will really help the customer to when everything works great, right? When it doesn't work and when you start troubleshooting or looking at the breach response, then that would be really, really helpful with customer know, okay, I know this, I can discard that, right? Otherwise your incident response scenario goes on hours and hours because you may be looking at the red herring. Totally agree. I think if provider can do that, help the customer to be more like a transparent in terms of what a product makes of, that would be really helpful. A situation like that, I agree. And the very last one here is compliance, alignment, and adherence. So it's always a rush to move into the cloud, right? And then without proper thinking, okay, what's my security requirements should be for, like, okay, which standard do I follow? So we measure ourselves against the compliance of that that is standard. Any, be it CSA, CCM, or ISO, whatever, CIS benchmark, whatever customer choose, and then they have something benchmark who work against. Well, we at least what I have seen as a ex-Microsoft employee, and talking to some lot of other my peers of same domain, almost non-existent. People are slowly start doing it, but it's a late to start for everyone. Because of that, all the challenges doesn't help for security, have a secure workload and prevent the breach for the organizations. Any question? Any suggestions? Sure.
Would you mind giving an example of a case when it would help to know what's going on under the hood in an incident response with a cloud?
Sure, that would be the point of platform complexities. Yeah, sure. I can give you one real example, like the one I gave you example earlier about the Kubernetes. So other one is like App Gateway, for example, Azure App Gateway, right? Azure App Gateway is it's a product made up of 2 or 3 Azure individual component, Key Vault, what do you call Nginx, and the internal load balancer that makes Azure App Gateway. Now, when we're looking at that's under the hood, but from a customer perspective, app doesn't know. And then each of those components would have a separate logging, right? Then when you start like really digging into that, you get into a different thing that you don't expect to see. That's why I mean, like, if the provider can give us a bit more insight, it's, this is the app gateway, but this is what's under the hood. This is what you expect from the product, like in terms of, digging more into the, platform level, then it makes much sense. Even like when in my experience, when I working with the Microsoft support engineer, that's often a challenge because not all the time, even support engineer understand what the product is about. That's why if the provider a little bit more insight around what a component makes what are the combination of component makes a product, that helps everyone in the community, customer, provider, whoever. Does that help? Maybe. Do you mind if I grab a coffee there as well?
Is this just another example where certain CSPs don't take security by design, well, at all?
Sorry, I dispute to that. I think the provider, they do take security seriously. That's why they go through their own the certification, like what do you call it? They do ISO. What's the other one? SOC 2, all that thing. They go through that. And again, going to the same point I mentioned earlier, have they done enough that customers like to have it? Probably still a learning curve for them as well, as they learn as they go along. But I think to answer that question, it would be unfair to say that providers don't think of the security seriously. I think that would be unfair to say, in my opinion.
I said certain CSPs. And so just to say, I think they talk a lot about it, but don't actually deliver enough. Certain CSPs.
Totally agree with that. I completely agree with that. I mean, 100%.
And just to be clear, Rob, you're talking about secure by default rather than just secure, right? It's not, we'll give you the controls to secure yourself, shared security model. It's, we'll give you the controls, but they default to don't shoot yourself in the foot. That's a valid criticism for certain CSPs, yes.
I think we won't have a bit of side corner conversation about the CSP later on. Sure. If no further question, I'll take it to next slide here. So I think now with Bearings, working for Bearings. Now I'm a customer of a cloud provider, and then those challenges, what I described, earlier, very much applies to the company I work for, probably everyone on this room here as well, right? So, and now, security is very paramount, especially for a company like the company I work for, the financial organization, is a very, very critical component, right? Very, a requirement. And then then here, this slide basically outlines at the high level what we're doing to overcome those challenges. And just to be clear, this is the very beginning. We are trying our best. We're not there yet. We're probably on a day 1.5 at the moment where we are, but this is the journey we're heading towards to overcome those challenges as we speak, okay? So increased attack surface. Yeah, so basically, what we're doing to limit the exposure to that, to this challenge is we design, because we know our workload, our applications, its type, our requirement, our applications, and its architecture. So what we doing is we have designed established a design pattern for our application. So these applications should meet this, design pattern. Then it should be deployed, following this design pattern. And this design pattern, we are confident it has adequate security controls in place. Just to give you one example, a very basic example, you got web apps in a typical landing zone in a cloud, right? You got web apps, SQL servers behind a, one or two, kind of thing, right? Very basic web apps. Now, when we design when we, determine the design pattern for that, okay, what is the security requirement? Okay, the web apps must have a public exposure disabled, public network access disabled, right? Same for the SQL as well. Okay, you must follow the network security group control to make the network segmentation isolation within that application environment. And then now that's within application. Now outside that, it must pass through the NSG control, network security control, and then hit the firewall in the hub environment for the further inspection on the firewall. Now, on the top of that, we add, okay, who is allowed to access the web app? Who can access the SQL? And from at what level, from the identity perspective, RBAC, okay? This is the kind of design pattern we have designed. That means now each time we deploy the application architecture, we have a very consistent deployment for number of applications following the design pattern. That means now we know by deploying that design pattern, we naturally, reduce the attack surfaces. So this is very, very critical. I think this is certainly what we found is, at least from the security, professional perspective, security role perspective, this gives you very confident, hey, okay, this meets the security requirement. And also now the deployment is there, workload is now stood up. Now you plug that into a, real-time monitoring tool. Now, anything that deviates from, what was agreed or, established, defined, design, anything, deviates from that, it will be picked up and alerted by the, security monitoring tool. That means now it gives you opportunity, because something is not quite right, and go and have a look at it, fix it there, and then also fix the resource the monitoring tool is yelling about. Also go and fix on the code so that future deployment of that resource would also be mitigated from that, from that non-compliance, because we now actually, dealt with that at the code, at the source. I hope that makes sense. Second one, privileged identities and overboard permission. I mean, this is probably like everyone else. This is a very much of issue on every organizations, but we work in a number of work streams to deal with that very issue. So one is basically we're saying any privileged access to a workload, to either be a data plane or management plane, that needs to be PIM controlled. That means now as a user go through the PIM. PIM stands for probably, if just in case you know, colleagues here, non-Azure knowledge, then that's basically privileged identity management. That means if I need something, for example, if I need an owner access to a subscription or database, then I go through that, that control, then, elevate my permission rather than my standing permissions before I have owner access, the privileged access to the resource. This is what we're doing. Now that's for the privileged identities. Other one is RBAC. Okay, this is basically just about access, or to for me to go and do my job. And this is very much in a design phase at the moment. We're going through a lot of iteration to get that right, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge. The problem, I think, that what we're learning is the main primary challenge is when we started the cloud journey, everyone in the team, also almost majority of the people in the team had almost like a God right access there, right? God level access. Now, when we talk about the RBAC, we're looking to revoke that access and give you just enough access. Now, I wouldn't be happy because, yesterday I could do everything, what I wanted to do, click a button. Now I have to go through all this hassle before I have the access. That's very much of a challenge. I think challenge is like two things: to get that from a security perspective, get that balance right. What is it just about, or just about enough access, and from and other one is like how do we manage that? To manage the people, the people's expectation in the team, because it's going to be argument. I was able to do this everything yesterday. Click a button. Now you took everything away. Managing that in a mindset is a very, very critical thing. Second, and a third thing is access reviews. Now, whatever the streamlining we have done so far for around the RBAC, we continuously doing the, do the access review. What we thought was a streamlined access 6 months ago, that actually was indeed a streamlined access, or it still is overboarded permission that can only the access review process can tell us that. And we go through that on a certain, roles as well, and certain resources in our cloud. Lack of visibility. Sure.
Sorry, can I challenge you on the RBAC?
Sure.
So the smart money is moving away from RBAC into ABAC and now CBAC. Are you looking at that?
If I can be honest with you, no. I think we see ourselves far away from that, if I can be honest with you. First, we haven't even got this one right yet. This is already a struggle for us to get to where we are, where we want it to be. Then, ABAC, even our conversation, if I can be honest with you.
Okay, because I think most people are moving away from RBAC because they face just that problem, which is you can never fix it. It's in a large organization, the elephant is too big. So evict the elephant and put in something that works.
No, thank you. I take that feedback. I appreciate it. This, like I said, is very much a learning curve. Appreciate it. Explore that. Okay, thanks. Lack of visibilities. Like I said, the major problem around the cloud is the shadow IT. Developer or anyone got access to the cloud, is almost a playground. I want to, do this one, click a button, the resource is stood up. No one knows, what I'm doing. Is production data been into that resource, which, just been deployed for as a toy, playing toy in the cloud, right? No visibility. What we're doing that makes sure it doesn't happen, we basically have plugged in a CSPM tool, which almost gives us an instant-ish, visibility of a resource that's gone into the cloud. Now, as I mentioned earlier, increased attack surface section there. Now we know what our baselines are. We know what our workloads are. Now, if someone goes and deploy a resource outside that baseline, that instantly becomes a notification in form of alerts notification. It gives us opportunity, okay, what that resource is, why that's been deployed, what data in there, blah, blah, blah. And that basically, that starts a conversation point. Okay, why even that's there, okay? That's the CSPM tool. It's been really, really helpful for us to give us that insight, what's happening. Otherwise, it's very much, black box. Yeah, so now we got the alerts, right? So, busy environment, cloud environment, a lot of developer working on, using the deployment pipeline, resource get stood up there. Now, alerts, generated, hundreds of alerts generated on a daily basis. We only get a small team on our, cyber threat operation team, only 4 colleagues work on that team. Now, for us, if we are to look at every single, alert as a, go behind them as a threat hunting, anyone would leave the job in a week time because it's unmanageable. To deal with that, we have deployed a SOAR platform. What that does is it does do the initial triage of the alerts coming in to establish what is the if it's a false positive. Have we seen that before? Did we mark that as a false positive? If the answer is yes, then the platform itself basically close that alert. Hey, okay, this is a known false positive, close it, no longer of interest for, hunting, job done at that time. Anything escape from that, and then we will look at it as a, do the threat analysis a bit more, inside of that to see, understand if this is the issue or not. Okay? That's what I do. And that's proving really helpful, but we're not quite there yet. It's very much a learning curve, maturing on that, but that's proven very helpful for us in terms of at least to cut down those initial level of unmanageable noise otherwise coming through the platform. Yeah, and third thing we also do is cloud native policy definition. So if you are aware, familiar with the Azure policy definitions, we also leverage Azure policy definitions to mark our governance compliance. For example, just to give an example here, what I meant by that is storage account, for example, we deploy a blob storage in Azure. Our standard says, okay, no storage account should be publicly exposed, or the blob with anonymous, public access. What this policy will do is, this policy is, defined exactly to evaluate the configuration against that policy. So if it finds when now, because this policy exists, and then if I go and deploy a blob storage with the public network access enabled and with the blob, blob access with the blob with anonymous access, this policy will, find that configuration. First, it will disable, it will deny that deployment. And if we sometime, not all the time, we have that as a deny mode, we have an audit mode. What that does is, if it's a deny mode, the policy will deny the deployment. That means the resource will never be provisioned in the first place. But it's an audit mode, then it will identify that resource and it will flag us as, hey, okay, this resource has just been gone. There's a non-compliant resource just been gone in the platform. We get a red flag there. Simple as that. Okay, that's proving really, really helpful. And I think that is a great native tool, at least the Azure provides for the customer there. Yeah. Oh, not there yet. Workload dynamics. So again, we talked about the design pattern. We leverage Azure policy to decide only the resources that match our design pattern can be deployed. Otherwise, policy will deny the deployment. For example, if I go and try to deploy a VPN gateway, for example, or express route gateway in my Azure platform, I cannot do that because the policy will deny that, hey, okay, it's not allowed resource type workload that I can deploy, okay? If needed, if some Azure reason now we need to deploy the VPN gateway, for example, then that, we will provide exception for that resource on that specific scope on the Azure region, then it gets deployed. Otherwise, it'll be blocked at the time of the deployment. Yeah, and again, what is the workload required for a given solution, given application? We have designed a intake process. Let's say if I'm to design an application ABC, for example, that goes through the intake process that gets reviewed, okay, for me to make this application work, I need this, resources, components. That means now, and then if anything of those resources I have outlined as a requester is outside our agreed pattern, then that becomes a part of the conversation, full review cycle, and then that would be included as one of the allowed resource type for the application. So at that time, basically whitelisted whitelisted workload, then it can be deployed. DevSecOps practice. So again, this is the area we look into really mature in this area as we go. Recently, so we leverage a provider's vendor platform to introduce a enforcement of a application security enforcement. What that means is that platform is already scanning our repos and then code, and then all the open source code on that we have on our entire repo. So it already knows the security state of those code and then SCAs on the repo. Then we enable anything, any code or any SCA packages with the critical vulnerabilities. Okay, we deny the deployment. What that means now is we introduce the enforcement now and then we have enabled that on our deployment pipeline, CI/CD pipelines. That means now, as a developer, if I go and deploy a application that contains a open source package with the critical CVEs, it would be denied by that enforcement because our policy says anything with the critical severity is a deny deployment. So as a developer, there's nothing the developer can do unless that they upgraded the package to lower down the severity or mitigate the CVE. Otherwise, they got stuck there.
What happens to stuff that's already in deployment?
Great question. So that means those are the continuous review. At that time, they continuous review what's out there and then mitigate, the mitigate cycle to go through that. What's out there is already out there, but there's anything net new coming in is go through the clean start, if you like.
And do you maintain metrics on time to remediate?
As of today, we do not, but this is exactly the conversation I had with the vendor. We talk with the working with who provides the platform exactly to provide that metrics for us. We look into Power BI, the metrics, say, okay, beginning of this month, I had this number of code, with this critical CVEs. Now this is X number has been mitigated or X number has been added in the last 30 days. This exactly we look into Power BI metrics for that to get the metrics. Absolutely. Very great point. Yes. Yeah, and probably like everyone else now, for to meet the requirement of our design pattern, agreed design pattern, we have a CI/CD pipeline, CI/CD deployment method to make sure that anything we deploy that's meeting our requirement gets deployed and a consistent way. That's why we use a deployment pipeline to make that happen.
How is everyone gearing up on the knowledge and education and getting there to learn all of the different technologies you can use and the cloud platforms together? How easy, difficult that journey is for you? Just to ask the question.
Yeah, so I think you basically have to run in order to not fall behind. Anyone who thinks they're ahead probably needs to review what news sources they're looking at. News, LinkedIn, feeds from your vendors in terms of what's changing. But it's a fire hose of information. So it's actually just about trying to pick sources that you trust that generally give you good insight, but understanding that you will still miss stuff. That's really it. You can't get ahead. I don't think there's too much change. A bit of both. You learn constantly on the daily, and then if you're interested, you do it outside of work.
Well, I think, when we have community events like this, get together, get some topics out together and just learn one topic at a time, make it more of a regular, Anyone else? You want that all the Azure, AWS staff, and this, yes, all these certifications, but not all of it,
I'm certainly not admitting to doing all of that training, but just back to your sort of original point, I think a lot of the CSP training courses are pretty good. I think there's a lot of good content out there. I think part of the challenge comes for organizations that are operating multiple clouds, multiple CSPs specifically, in terms of how they operationalize that, what their teams look like, what their operating models look like. I think some more of the sort of forward-leading organizations, and I know, Graham, you're the same, have a specific cloud security practice or team, and don't expect that from their sort of incumbent sort of security operations team, which I think is a good model and works well and scales well.
If I wanted to play devil's advocate with you, how many of the CSP training courses are designed to upskill you versus vendor lock-in?
Depends which vendor you want to be locked in on, I suppose, doesn't it? But I think in terms of some of the fundamentals, the bullet points, the bigger bullet points you've got there, I think all the CSP courses cover that content. Obviously, it's unique to their particular environment, and depending on what colour you wear, it depends on which cloud provider you get locked into, I guess. Or at least 30,000. So.
I think on that question there, right? I personally think, especially around this DevSecOps practices we just talked about, enabling something enforcement through the platform is the easiest job out there. But what is the hardest job is changing the developer's mindset towards, DevSecOps. That's why, bolded there. To change the mindset is the very, very hardest, challenging job there. People will, the developer, at least in my experience, no offense, by the way, if any of us here are a developer here, okay? Only coming from my experience. So I think anything we say, guys, we're doing this, people will naturally think, oh, you're blocking us, right? Not asking a further question, why we, yes, we are blocking it, but not asking a question, why we look into that, basically simply blocking us. And exactly to answer that question, in terms of certification, I think, it would be an ideal world. It'd be ideal to get every developer to do a CISP course. That would give them very, very, I know it's a drag, it took me about 9 months to do that. But I think when you get that over the line, at least you get a bit of sense of, security mindset. And then when it comes to doing this piece of work, security guy coming and I'm enforcing the, critical CVEs, that instantly get why the guy is trying to do this. I think in an ideal world, it would be ideal to do everyone get the CISP certification done. Company paid the expenses, that's fine, right? But I think that would be the ideal way to do. That means now it's not any vendor locked in. I'm a CISP. I can walk into Amazon job or any security related job. It helps without touching a vendor specific, right?
A little vendor lock-in anecdote for you. Someone was mentioning the other day just how cheap our Lambda bill was. So I was like, yeah, it's fantastic. Have you seen our CloudWatch bill lately?
This is probably a generic question. Do people find if they focus on DevSecOps, then their privileged identity problem gets smaller?
That's one of the things. That's exactly naturally comes in the mind. Oh, you're taking our access away. Not looking at the bigger picture, what else comes with it and why? Oh, as soon as you do that, oh, you're revoking access.
But really, if everything's being done as code, don't really need so much privileged access.
You don't, exactly. But this is exactly what I mean. Bit of education around that, in building that security mindset, I think that goes a long way. Right.
So I was just going to add to that point. The danger there is that you move away from privileged human identities to privileged non-human identities. So your developers don't have the permissions, but their pipelines do. So all you've done is just shifted the problem left. Automation is great, but you can also automate your problems.
Okay, last but not least here now. So talked about the lack of compliance and alignments for the compliance and then adherence to that, those standards out there. As organizations, as we speak, we look into certify ourselves for a ISO 27000 certification. That's very much our GRC team is busy on ramping on to make that happen for our company. In terms of our cloud security posture management and measure ourselves against the KPI, against the standard, we basically measure ourselves for a CSA CCM as a standard to get the metrics, which we get the metrics for the cloud security posture, and then that's been cascaded to the higher up in the organization. I believe that goes to the quite high in the organization. Okay, every month to give them a insight of our cloud security posture every month. So that's what we're doing. That really helps. So as a security professional, then it keeps us at the feet. Okay, anything goes wrong, okay, now this month our security score is up 5%. Becomes a question. Okay, what happened? What did we do wrong? What happened? What went wrong? Or what else we did? What contributed that? That gives a bit more like renewed sense of focus. Okay, why did that happen? Something happened.
Really interested in the last thing on your slide. As a security leader in a room of security leaders, you say exceptions are managed through the cyber GRC process. What does that look like?
Sure. So developer, sometimes there's a business need trying to do something, but the design pattern quite cannot deliver that. Just to give you one example, in fact, I've got a call soon after this meeting here to go exactly discuss that. So we're looking to deploy a workload in a new Azure region where we only got bare bone, bare security controls in place compared to our other Azure region where we've got very mature controls in place. So knowing that a region doesn't contain all the security controls or our defined pattern, architecture, it doesn't contain that. So we still need to deploy the workload in that region to manage the business, requirement. Exactly the scenario like that. We still do the risk analysis, make sure we have a security controls in place. That not necessarily mean it would be the layered security we have in our other mature Azure region. So we do that with the exception process, so it gets reviewed later down the line, 6 months period. Okay, can we do something differently now? Add those missing gaps, control gaps, 6 months down the line.
Do you think that's a problem with the definition of the business requirement? In the business requirement is we should deploy in this region. Hey, we need to do this, and the business requirement should be, hey, we should deploy in this region as soon as we can, do it securely.
Very right, you said it. This is exactly what I'm going to tell them on the call, half an hour time from now. but people high above, beyond my pay grade will tell me this is what I need. Okay, you just need to do what you need, a bare minimum security. But
you communicate the risk back to them clearly.
I mean, yeah, this is exactly the idea of going to the exception process. Now we know the risk it comes with it, so we know about it. Then we can follow up with that, later down the line. Otherwise, if we just go and no exception, but go and deploy it, that means now first we created a problem ourselves that region now Azure region has a non-agreed or non-defined architecture in place.
So how
Right.
far will that exception make it up the organisation? Right to the top?
It gets reviewed higher, right at the top, yes. At least, it gets through our CISO colleagues. And then from there, how further it goes, I don't know, but at least it gets to, as far as to our CISO colleague, hey, okay, we know. And of course, it would be managed under the GRC function within organization in terms of that managing the approval, but it goes to as far as the CISO, I know.
So the board may or may not see this acceptance.
I would not like to comment on that. I honestly don't know. At least
Okay.
I make
That's
sure, I make sure it goes to the GRC. That's I play as a middle, as a middleman there to, link that breeze between the different team. From there it goes, it's already in the high up in the management.
You push it up to people whose call it is to accept
Who
it.
needs to go to, exactly.
They're the ones getting sued
Correct.
or whatever.
I mean, let's put it this way, right? It goes to the CISO, and then if CISO is happy to sign off on the risk, happy days, right?
Enough?
So, okay, this is the last slide we've come up to. Now, thank you for listening. Any question? Are welcome. Any suggestion? If we do not doing anything not quite right?
Just back on the last point, I'm a
Sure.
CISO, it's not my risk. It's the businesses.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. It's the business at the risk, yes. But from signing off, if from the security perspective, if CISO has looked at as long as it comes from their knowledge, it's already beyond my pay grade. This is the point I'm trying to make. If I didn't do that,